So I generally prefer to give board talks, board and chalk talks, and I don't like giving slide talks. So here I'll be giving something emulating board talk, like using this pen tablet. So my handwriting will not be very good because those who have used pen tablets, I'm not using it for a long time. So bear with my handwriting. And for the students, I'm telling you that you don't have to take notes because I have typed lecture notes for this topic. So I can send it to Somnath who can distribute to all. Okay. So what are the integers? So that was, yeah, I also liked your theme, that what is theme. So before integers, before going into integers, I would like to ask that what are the natural numbers? So what are the natural numbers? And as in the abstract, I said that I'll begin from absolutely nothing. So I'll precisely do that. So before that, let me define an operation. So define S, which is an operation on sets called the successor operation. Successor. So how is it defined? For a set A, S of A is defined to be A union the set containing A. And I'll call S of A the successor of A. Okay, so this is called the successor of A. Now, as promised, I'll start from nothing. So let me start with nothing. So this is my first set, the empty set. And then I'll keep on applying this successor operation. So this is my starting point. Now I'll do this S of empty set, which is by definition empty set union set containing empty set. And you know that union of any set with empty set is the set itself. So I get this set back. Now I apply S on the resultant. So this one. So it looks like I'll take the set union the set containing this set. And you know how to find the union, you just list the elements, right? So you put bracket, then list the elements of each set. So this set has element, first set has element empty set, and second set has element this set containing empty set. So let me go one more step. So S of this set. A lot of brackets will come. Sorry. So this is again, I have first the set itself, union the set containing this set. Now, if you list the elements, I think I made a mistake here. I have to put another bracket. Yeah. So list the elements. So one element is this one. Another element is this one. And here I have only one element. So this set contains only one element. So this is this one. So I'm not writing the next step, which will be huge. It will look huge at least. So continue. So it is a fun exercise to do the next step. So you can try. So this way I am getting some sets. So let me give them some name so that or symbols so that we can work with them. So I am calling this one by this symbol. I am calling this set as this symbol. Then I am calling this 2, calling this 3. And for today's talk, you completely forget whatever you know about integers and natural numbers. So the 0, 1, 2, 3, they have no meaning except what I am telling now. So for me, 0 stands for this empty set, 1 stands for this set containing empty set, 2 stands for this one, and 3 stands for this one, and so on. So continuing, we are getting, so we got a set of symbols 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So we call them, we call this set the set of natural numbers and denote it by n. Some of you may say that why I am including 0. Actually, this construction it works without 0 as well, meaning you can just make the definition with 1 starting from 1. But afterwards, it will be clear that why I am taking 0. So for me, natural numbers, it starts from 0. Then, once you have this, the set n satisfies the following. Sorry. N satisfies the following, let us call them properties. So some of them are, they will look some obvious. 0 is a natural number. Number 2, there is no natural number whose successor is 0. So 0 is the first one. If m, n are two natural numbers are such that their successors are same, then they are equal. And number 4, let Pn be a statement. So there is a statement involving n. N is a natural number. Statement such that 1, P0 is true. Number 2, if Pm is true, then P of Sm is true, then Pn is true for all n. And perhaps you know why I wrote these properties in this fashion. Actually, these are all so-called, these are Peano axioms. So when you study the number system, I think in BSc first year, starting with the natural numbers, integers, and then especially you focus on real numbers. But Peano axioms are there. So Peano gave a set of axioms for natural numbers to axiomatize the natural numbers. And what I did before this with empty set and all these things, that was von Neumann's construction of natural numbers. He showed that, okay, there is a model satisfying this Peano axiom. So I precisely just did that. I mean, not I did, I mean, I'm just copying from their work. Some interesting, and you know that the fourth one, okay, so fourth one, this one is called axiom of induction. We all use it. This is a very powerful machinery, this axiom of induction. So far, any question? Okay.
Sir, when you write continue in the above construction, does it not presuppose induction when you say continue?
No. This is you see, this is a recursive type of definition, right? Continue. I'm not saying induction is about a statement being true or not. I'm not making any statement here. I'm saying that you just keep on doing this. You are getting an infinite set.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir, what is successor?
Successor is the operation that I defined at the beginning, that if you take any set A, then successor of A is the set formed in this fashion: A union the set containing A. Okay. And what I have shown you that I am taking 0 to be the empty set. 1 is successor of empty set, which turns out to be the set containing empty set, and so on. So 1 is a successor of 0, 2 is a successor of 1, 3 is a successor of 2. And now actually I can say 1 is the successor of 0, 2 is the successor of 1, 3 is the successor of 2, etc. And you can see that 0 has no predecessor, meaning there is no natural number whose successor is 0. Okay. So this is a construction.
So this is a very lengthy type of things now. So,
lengthy, yeah.
But when we have to represent some large number, then how can you represent that one?
Yeah, so that's why I am introducing these symbols 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to write those big sets anymore, right? So that's why the symbols came. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to define addition, etc., and the usual procedure. So you will see. But the spirit of this talk is to, I am trying to look at natural numbers from a very abstract framework. Okay. Natural numbers are not God given, that someone told you that, okay, this is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is addition, and you do whatever you do. So that's how we are taught in school, right?
Yes.
But mathematicians are not happy with that. So they want to axiomatize. So Peano axiomatized that. Then people ask that, okay, so can you construct natural numbers? Can you give a model from set theory? So this is a very formal thing. So formal set theory framework, can one give a model for natural numbers? And that model is this one. So meaning after this point, you don't have to bother about this empty set and these notations.
So 2 contains 0 and 1.
Two content, so that was my next remark. Okay, that's a very good point. So my so observation, first one is that every natural number, the way I constructed, every natural number is a set. And any non-zero natural number is the set of all its predecessor. So the one you told just right now, the 2 is basically the set 0, 1. If you go back and see that, that is precisely what is happening. 3 is the set 0, 1, 2.
Sir, in this fashion, how you represent the fraction?
Fraction.
Yes, sir.
Now I have not come to fraction. So if suppose we are in class 1 or in elementary class like kindergarten, okay. So right now I don't know fraction. I have just those symbols. I don't know even addition. Okay. So as I said, that forget everything you know. So right now I have all these symbols, and so what I mean is that, okay, so this is fine. So my next step is that, so first thing I did, that I did some formal construction and then gave them some names so that I can work with some better symbols like 0, 1, 2, 3. Now I want to define addition. And I will do it slowly so that you understand this concept of recursive definition. So, and I will give illustration. So addition I am defining. So define plus on n as follows. So first declare n plus 0 to be equal to n for all n. And then the definition is recursive definition, recursively. And I will give illustration so that you understand that n plus successor of m, how do you define? You already know the definition of n plus m when you are defining this. So this one, this addition is already done in the previous step. I will explain. So this is a recursive definition. So you start with n plus 0 equal to n. Then you are saying that suppose I have defined n plus m. Then n plus successor of m will be successor of n plus m. So now I will teach you addition. So my illustration is the following. So you know 1 plus 0 is equal to 1. So this is by 1, right? Now you would like to know what is 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1. So I want to apply this formula 2. So I will write like this: 1 plus s of 0. 1 is successor of 0. And now if we apply the formula, it says it is s of 1 plus 0. So this is by 2. And s of 1 plus 0. Now I know that 1 plus 0 is 1. So this is s of 1. So this is 2. Successor of 1 is 2. Next you want to do the same thing. So this is recursively being done. 1 plus 2. So you know that this is 1 plus s of 1. S of 1 plus 1 again by 2. You see that I have done 1 plus 1 in the previous step, and that's why I am being able to do 1 plus 2 in this step. So this 1 plus 1, it was done in the previous step. So that's what I am saying, that this is a recursive definition. So this is s of 2 because it is done by previous step. this is 3 and so on. So you can, so you have learned addition. Okay. So it's learned natural numbers and now you have learned addition of natural numbers. And in general, if I want to look at n plus 1, this is, I'll write as n plus s of 0. So by 2, it becomes n plus 0. So this is by 2. And n plus 0 is n. So this is by 1. So what it tells us that implies successor of n is n plus 1. This plus was not there before. So now that we have defined in this way, we have introduced the symbols and defined addition in this way, we can now forget about all those things which we did with set theory, like empty set, etc., successor operation, etc. So right now you have natural numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and you know how to add. Okay. Now what are the yeah.
How did you get that definition that then recursively after that one?
This definition.
Yes.
How did I get this?
Yes, that one.
Meaning, how did I get, meaning what was the idea behind this definition, or
Yes,
how
sir.
it is working?
What was the idea behind this?
Idea is simply actually when people formulated these things, they studied the properties of natural numbers, which we all know, and then they formulated this definition that I'll do it at one step at a time, right? I'm starting, my starting point is n plus 0 equal to n for all n. Then I would like to know what happens to n plus 1. So what, meaning I am adding n and the successor of 0. So that's how it came, meaning if you study the addition carefully of natural numbers, this is how it is going to work, right? So you see, finally I have proved that successor of m is m plus 1. So now if you look back in this formula, what is happening? You are proving that n plus m plus 1 is equal to n plus m plus 1. This is very simple, right? You understood? Here I actually proved that s of n is n plus 1, right? After
Yes,
all these formalities. So now you read that formula which I wrote before.
Sir,
Yeah.
are we already assuming the commutativity of the addition here?
No.
Because 1 plus 1, I'm not able to see how 1 plus 2 will be equal to 2 plus 1 from this definition. Because then we need a m minus 1, s of m minus 1. And
very good, very good. Okay, very good point. Okay. So what is your 2 plus 1? So this is 2 plus s of 0. So that is s of 2 plus 0. So that is s of 2. So that is equal to 3. I am not using commutativity. But I'll give you, I'll give this as exercise. Okay. So I was about to write this, and it's good that whatever I am about to write, you are asking the right questions. So n plus, so natural number together with plus satisfies the following properties. So number 1 is that n plus m plus p is equal to n plus m plus p for all n, m, p in n. Now, so this is associativity. So, you can add two natural numbers at a time. So, if you have 3, so you have two ways of doing it. You are adding m plus p first, then you are adding n, or you are adding n and m first and then adding p, right? So it says associativity, which says that you can shift the brackets. Now, can anyone tell me how to prove this?
We can fix 2 and induct on one variable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So axiom of induction, so that will give you the proof. Okay. So I'm not giving the proof, I'm just telling you and giving the idea. So 0 belong to n has the property that 0 plus n is equal to n plus 0, sorry, is equal to n for all n in n. Number 3, n plus m is equal to m plus n for all mn belong to n. So this is again, this is commutativity. So this is again you can prove using induction. So try to prove these things. And I'll write a property 4 here. M plus a is equal to n plus a implies m is equal to n. So this is called cancellation. Okay. I'll probably come back to these properties if time permits. So keep, that's why I wrote this in this fashion. So I have associativity, I have existence of this additive identity 0, and then I have commutativity, and then I have this cancellation. Okay. Now, okay, perhaps you know, I think in second year, so remark, n plus is an abelian cancellative monoid. Are you familiar with this term, monoid? I think if
Sir, I don't.
you know, you don't know, right? Okay, so I'll come back. Okay, if time permits, I'll come back and tell you what is a monoid and in the generalization. So for that, for the time being, forget about this remark. Okay. Now you got a set equipped with addition, so an algebraic structure, and one way of looking at it will be to try solving equations. You would like to solve equations in this framework. So let us look at x plus 1 is equal to 2. So this is the equation. This equation has a solution in n, namely x equal to 1. Okay. Now what about, let me put a simple equation, x plus 1 is equal to 0. Does it have a solution?
So we assume there is no successor of
Absolutely.
0.
Exactly. So answer is no, as 0 has no predecessor in n. So there is no natural number such that its successor is 0. So that's why I don't have this equation, no solution to this equation. So in mathematics, you must have seen that whenever people get stuck, they like this type of question, that here I have this, I'm trying to solve an equation and I'm not being able to do it within that framework, then people try to expand that system, like to embed the existing system into a bigger one where it has solution. So nice example will be complex numbers. So over reals, you tried to solve x square plus 1 equal to 0, and you found that no, it does not have any solution. Then you constructed a system which is complex numbers where real numbers are embedded, and that equation has a solution. And this embedding comes in a very meaningful way. No structure of real line is disturbed. It remains, its addition, multiplication, everything, they remain as they are. So it is just nicely embedded in a bigger system. So right now our aim is to do the same for natural numbers, to expand in to embed in into a bigger structure where n retains all its properties and we will have a solution to x plus 1 equal to 0 in the new system. So that is our aim. Now problem is that you can say that, okay, integers are there. Right now I don't have integers. Right now I'm in, say, kindergarten. I only know natural numbers. I know 0, 1, 2, 3, and I know how to add. And apart from set theory, I don't have any other tool. So how to do this construction from thin air? So take G equal to n cross n. I take this set and define a relation by declaring the ordered pair A comma B is related to C comma D if and only if A plus D equal to C plus B. So exercise is very easy to check that this is an equivalence relation. I'm not checking that part. Now I am using this symbol Z. This is the set of all equivalence classes of G with respect to this relation, equivalence relation is. Okay. So it looks like the equivalence class of, say, A comma B, where A, B belong to G. G is n cross n. Okay, so an equivalence class will be denoted by the square bracket. Now I have this set Z, which is set of all equivalence classes of G with respect to this equivalence relation. Now I would like to define addition on Z, and I will use a different symbol. Define addition. So let me write plus with a circle on Z as follows. So I'll take the help of the addition in natural numbers to do that. So I have, let us take a class A, another class AB, and another class C comma D, and I define the addition as, sorry, this is my addition. This addition is the class of A plus C, B plus D. Now note that this and this, these two additions are from natural numbers, because A, C, B, D, they are natural numbers. So this addition, this plus is from N, what we learned today. Now you know that whenever we define something on representatives of equivalence classes, we have to check that that is well defined. I will not do the checking, but I will put this as exercise. So check that, this is very easy checking, that if class of AB is also represented by class of A prime B prime, and same thing for CD, if it is also represented by C prime D prime, then this result is same as this result. So which means that they don't, the definition does not depend on the representatives. So this tells, that implies that class is well defined. So check this, it's very easy and routine checking. So now we have this set Z and we have addition, and now let us explore its relation with natural numbers. So define phi from N to Z by, definition is very natural. So I have, say, N here, I will send it to the class of N comma 0. Now note that let phi of N1 equal to phi of N2. This implies N1 comma 0 is equal to N2 comma 0, two classes, which means that N1 comma 0 is related to N2 comma 0, and by definition of relation, so you remember the first entry plus last entry is equal to second entry, meaning first entry of the first one and the last entry of the second one is equal to second entry of the first one plus first entry of the second one. So N1 plus 0 is equal to N2 plus 0. So this implies N1 equal to N2. So implies phi is injective. So N is nicely embedded inside this set Z. So N is embedded inside Z, and we can identify N belong to N with this element of Z. So that's how it is sitting. So if you are like pictures, what is happening is that I have this N and I have this Z and I have this map phi, and here is the image of phi. So n is sitting inside Z, and I'll make this identification that n comma 0 of Z, the class of n comma 0 of Z, I can write it as just n because of this identification. Okay. Also observe that phi of n plus m. So here n, m are two natural numbers, is equal to, by definition, this will be the class of n plus m comma 0, which is same as class of n comma 0 direct sum, not direct sum, sorry, circle 1 m comma 0. So which is phi n plus phi n. The point being that phi is not just a map. This map respects the addition. So it says that if you take two natural numbers and add them as natural numbers and then apply phi, this is same as applying phi first and then adding them in this bigger set integers. So in this sense, n is embedded inside Z, but its algebraic structure is also intact in Z. So nothing is lost. So every property of n is retained inside Z. So phi respects addition. And now what I'll do is that I'll just drop the notation, this circled plus. Now I'll just write plus. Okay. So from now, write plus for this, because you see that a definition of addition of natural numbers has been extended to Z. So I can just freely write plus. Now 0 of Z is the class 0, 0, which is, yes, now note that 0 comma 1 plus 1 comma 0, these two classes, okay, I said I'll drop, but I keep doing that. This is 1 comma 1. Now if you go back to the definition of equivalence relation, I said that AB is related to CD if and only if A plus D is equal to B plus C. Now 1 comma 1 is nothing but 0 comma 0, right? Because of this, because so as 1 comma 1 is related to 0 comma 0. So what have you got? You got, so let me write it is in this symbol plus. Now 1 comma 0, I can identify it with natural number 1. So natural number 1 is sitting inside Z in this fashion, and 0 comma 0 is simply 0 of natural numbers. So you have found an integer, so an element, so 0 comma 1 is a solution of x plus 1 equal to 0 in Z, which you did not get in natural numbers. Okay. So we constructed a solution in Z. So again, I don't like to, I would not like to work with these symbols like ordered pair and then square bracket, etc. So from now on, notation, write the class, the special type of element 0 comma n as this symbol, which I am not saying that this is minus, I am just putting a horizontal bar dash. Okay, but you know that this is minus. Now, how do the elements of Z look like? Take any element of Z, I can write this as this. Now, this m comma 0 is simply m, natural number, and I have introduced this symbol 0 comma n. This class I will represent as this minus n or dash n. So, this is indeed minus. Actually, what I have done here, to get solution of that equation x plus 1 equal to 0, I have added the negatives. So, construction of integer was about accommodating the negatives. So, that is how I got the bigger structure. So, the conclusion is that, so any integer, what it shows is that any integer is the difference of two natural numbers. As we have seen, yes.
Should not there be m plus of minus n?
Actually, you are right. You are right. So that is m. Okay. So if you want, I can write m plus of minus n. That is correct. And now I'll say that notation, the plus minus n will be written as minus n. Okay. You are right. When I am doing strictly formally, then I have to write m plus this, then this one within bracket. That's a very good observation. But now you see that we are trying to simplify things. So I'll simplify this notation, but by writing as minus n. And actually, I was very formal at the beginning, but now I am just trying to be a bit informal. Okay. So this was the construction of integers. So now you know that what are the integers. So how much time do I have? I have 6 more minutes. So I don't want to get into monoid or things like that, but or maybe I'll just mention one point. So a monoid is a set, obviously non-empty. Every time monoid is a set M together with addition, which is from M cross M to M, such that number 1 A plus B plus C is equal to A plus B plus C for all n belong to M, and number 2 there exists 0 belong to M, such that 0 plus A is equal to A plus 0 equal to A for all A in M. Now, M is called abelian if I have commutativity, and M is called cancellative if A plus M is equal to B plus M implies A equal to B. Very simple definition. This is slight short of group, right? Only thing missing here is that in group you have every element has an inverse, right? For A there is minus A, but here this part is missing. So example which you have seen today is that n plus is an abelian cancellative monoid. And what we did is that Z plus is a group and n plus is embedded inside Z plus, and it is done in a minimal way. So I'm not qualifying the term minimal, so it is done in a minimal way. So we say that this is the completion of the monoid n. So n has some things missing. So you put a bigger structure which becomes a group. So this is kind of completion of monoid n. Completion you have seen in other areas like real analysis. You know that Q is incomplete in some sense. Something was not happening in Q. Then you construct real numbers and you say that R is the completion of Q. So here again, something was not happening in natural numbers. I was not being able to solve every equation. So then I constructed something where I have those negatives, those solutions. So that's why I'm saying completion. Now exercise that show that for an abelian cancellative monoid M plus, there is a group G plus. I'll not make it difficult. There is a group G plus and a morphism, injective morphism, and a morphism phi from M to G, such that such that part I'll keep. I don't want to get into all this. So point is that the exercise is that emulate the construction of Z to construct G. So I'm saying that in place of natural numbers, you take this abelian cancellative monoid M, and you take this M cross M, then define similar equivalence relation, then you can construct a group G. Now this construction is one of the very important constructions in mathematics, and this construction is called, so that you can look up, so this construction is called so it is named after a famous mathematician, Grothendieck completion. So it is actually just copied from this construction of integers from natural numbers. So I think I'll stop here. It is 6:30. So now questions.
All right, yeah, so thanks for a wonderful talk, as usual, Mrinalda. So are there any questions or comments students have, any confusion that you want to be clarified? Yeah, Shomudeep, go ahead.
Sir, do you tell an example of non-abelian number or something?
Non-abelian?
Non-abelian, an example of something that is non-abelian.
Yeah, non-abelian, if you read, say, group theory, So you have non-abelian examples like you have GL2R. So if you look at GL2R, so these are all 2 by 2 invertible matrices, right? So with respect to matrix multiplication, this is a group. So every element is invertible, there is identity element, everything. But there are matrices AB in GL2R such that A times B is not equal to B times A. That you know, right? In 11-12, this thing is taught that what is A plus B whole square for matrices? So that is a tricky question. So that will be A square plus AB plus BA plus B square, because AB may not be equal to BA. So you can find examples.
Yeah, so Shayan and then maybe Rohan. So Shayan, yeah, you can ask a question.
Sir,
Yeah.
thank you for the talk, first of all.
Mhm.
It was a wonderful talk. And, like, I have two different questions.
Hmm.
The first one being, like, since Z and N look so much alike, like they look alike in some sense,
Hmm.
like, is it possible to tweak Peano's axioms a little and change parts here and there to directly go into Z without involving N?
That actually I don't know. Okay. I'll think about it, and if I come up with an answer, I'll let you know through Somnath, but I really don't know. I mean, your point I understand, that N is countable, Z is countable, there is a bijection from N to Z, so why go through N and not directly to Z? So that is your question. But actually, historically, how these things came up, I can tell you that if you are familiar with the name Gödel's incompleteness theorem, etc. So there, this construction of, he used this construction of natural numbers to prove certain things, some very important things actually, which actually shook the mathematics world. So this construction is very important, but whether we can avoid this and go directly to Z, I really don't know to think of. What is the other question?
So the other one is a little unrelated to our talk. Am I allowed to ask it? Like, it's a little away from our talk now. Like, this construction that you've shown us, we studied this construction in first semester as well, and we know certain things from other places. For example, one you talked about the Gödel incompleteness. For example, we have also heard that Bertrand Russell gave a 362-page proof of 1 plus 1 equal to 2. So, like, there must be something missing with the construction we just saw, which Russell needed to fill up. So, what is the fact which is missing in our construction that we need to fill up with more formalization? What is the thing we are missing in this construction?
Oh, that part again, I have to look. I mean, you see, the formal set theory, the way it developed. First of all, George Cantor gave this definition of sets, which was very naive definition, and then Russell came up with the paradox. Then there was a lot of problem. I mean, people were not ready to accept various things, and Russell actually, again, he shook the mathematics world by. Cantor was very happy with his definition, but Russell's paradox was a blow. And then it took a lot of time to formalize set theory. This Zermelo-Fraenkel axioms, those things came later. And the one you are talking about, I don't know the time period, I have to see. The von Neumann construction, it came much later. So I think those parts were then over, meaning, so set theory was much more formalized by then. So that's why you can do this construction. And probably that's why Russell had some problem with that. Because at that time, set theory was not so much developed axiomatically. That will be my guess.
So you want to say, like, the way addition is defined in today we defined addition, if we can use that definition of addition to easily show 1 plus 1 equal to 2 in like 2 or 3 lines. So that you want to say that 3 lines capture everything that Russell did in that 362 pages?
It seems so, but I have to see. I attended some talks by one logician, Mihir Chakraborty. He was actually our teacher. So he talked about this history of set theory. So that was quite fascinating. I know bits and pieces of it, but I don't know the entire thing. But yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. So Rohan, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, I had also had two questions. One was that I mean we've constructed z from n to solve this equation x plus 1 equal to 0 in this form. But I just wanted to say that now I mean we wrote down finally that in the same form that x plus 1 equal to 0 has a solution equivalence class of 0 1.
Yeah.
But even if we have a function phi which is mapping n to z, why is it reasonable to say that we have actually solved this equation because we have changed our meaning of 1 0 addition everything? So I mean we have changed what each of those terms mean. So why is it reasonable to say that we have solved that exactly? That was my first question.
Okay, so do you agree that when you are working with complex numbers and if you encounter real numbers there, do you treat them as complex numbers or do you just think of them as real numbers?
As real numbers.
So you don't make any distinction, right, at that point?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
real number is nicely embedded inside complex numbers. So here the same thing is happening, that once you are inside Z, up to that map phi, my n is embedded inside Z. Like for complex numbers, what is happening, that you are taking a complex number is a ordered pair, right? Ordered pair of real numbers a comma b, and which satisfies those axioms of addition, multiplication, etc. Now real numbers to complex number, the map is a going to a comma 0. But you don't really look at a comma 0. You really work with a. So precisely that is what is happening. So when complex numbers are constructed, the addition of real numbers, the multiplication of real numbers, everything is carried to complex numbers. So real number is nicely sitting inside complex numbers. So exactly the same thing.
Okay. Okay, sir. Sir, and my second question was that I mean our motivation was solving this x plus 1 equal to 0 in this kind of form.
Yeah.
So how much can we keep doing this? If we make up different kinds of equations, will we be forever constructing newer and newer systems to solve each time if it is already not there previously?
Okay. Okay, I understood your question. Okay, so yeah, actually, yeah, that then it requires a 2-hour talk. So 1 more hour. So point is that the next step is that I can define multiplication on n. Okay. So again, my point is that I have an algebraic system and I can form equation there whether I can solve it or not. So I can define multiplication on n. So again, so if you want, I can just write the multiplication on n. So you declare that n times 0 equal to 0 for all n, and then again the recursive definition, and so it says that if you know what is n times m, then you know how to define n times the successor of m. So this is n times m plus m. So like n times 1 is equal to n times s of 0. So this is n times 0 plus n. So that is equal to 0 plus n, that is equal to n. And similarly, you can do n times 2, etc. Now you can extend this multiplication to z. So extend this to z. Now in z, you try to solve this equation 2x equal to 3. It has no solution. Then you construct rational numbers because you would like to get the reciprocals accommodated. That is an algebraic construction. So that requires some time. Then in rational numbers, again you have all these addition, multiplication, nicely all these things are there. But in Q, you are trying to solve this equation, no solution. Then you construct real numbers. But unlike the previous constructions, the constructions of real from rationals is not an algebraic construction. And now you got R, then again you are trying to solve equation like x square plus 1 equal to 0, right? X square plus 1 is equal to 0. No solution in R. Then you construct complex numbers, and probably you know that complex numbers are algebraically closed. So far I was dealing with polynomial type equations. So every polynomial over complex numbers will have a root, it will have a solution. So the story ends there as far as this motivation or question is concerned.
Okay, sir.
And every time these constructions are done, the important point is that the same construction has been emulated to an abstract setup and gave rise to beautiful ideas. So in mathematics, every one of them. So that's the fascinating part. Okay.